Assalamu alaikum. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 16th edition of School of Tomorrow events, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beacon House in 2000 to engage global communities in conversations that shape the future of schools and societies. I would like to thank Google for Education, the lead sponsor for SOT 2023, their partner Tech Valley, and our titanium sponsor UBL. Other key sponsors include My Backpack, MK Books, Elite Bank Limited, Habib Bank Limited, Wateen, and Interwood. We also thank our SOT supporters, including Paramount Books and Nestle Pure Life, who have contributed to this year's event. Moving on to our housekeeping instructions, please ensure your cell phones are silent. Please use the SOT app to scan the QR code for session Q&A and feedback. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtags, that is hashtag Guardians of the Future and hashtag SOT 2023. If you need assistance, our ushers are here to help you. For questions, please use the flashcards provided by the ushers or the mobile app. The panel discussion will last for about 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes for question and answers. So, what if ChatGPT wrote it? Is our next session, and the moderator is Mr. Nasser Kasuri. Mr. Nasser Kasuri is the CEO of a number of companies under the Beacon House Group umbrella. This includes Beacon House International College, which provides UK-based undergraduate and postgraduate programs in Pakistan. He also heads Beacon Energy Limited, a provider of high-quality solar PV solutions, as well as Homebridge, Beacon House's first foray into fully online education. He sits on the board of Knowledge Platform, a company focused on leveraging AI and machine learning to bring quality learning to students in Pakistan, and is also the chairman of the board of Teach for Pakistan, an organization that places internees in 2-year teaching fellowships in government schools. He has done his BSc Social Sciences from the Lahore University of Management Sciences and Executive MBA from the London School of Economics, Triumph, delivered in conjunction with HSE Paris and NYU Stern. So let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Nasser Kasuri on stage.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 16th edition of SOT events, again, Guardians of the Future, Shaping Tomorrow with Generative AI. And welcome to this panel, where we ask, so what if ChatGPT wrote it? As generative AI models like ChatGPT become increasingly sophisticated, the lines between human-generated content and AI-generated content begin to blur. This presents an array of opportunities from automating mundane tasks to personalizing user experiences. However, it is not without its problems. The power of AI to generate content brings with it concerns about authenticity, misinformation, and shifting ethical boundaries. This session aims to unpack the capabilities of generative AI, delve into its practical applications, and critically examine the broader implications for our society. Our participants will explore the transformative potential of these technologies while also contemplating the responsibilities and obstacles that accompany such advancements. So we have a group of distinguished panelists with us today, who I shall introduce. So Dr. Tariq Banouri is a recipient of the Sitara Imtiaz and is a professor of economics at the University of Utah and has served as the chairman of Pakistan's Higher Education Commission. He has a PhD from Harvard University and has worked with the UN Division for Sustainable Development. His expertise encompasses sustainable development, governance, and the philosophy of knowledge. Mr. Jazeb Zahir is CEO of Tintash, a software services firm developing products for global clients like Sesame Workshop and BBC. He is an adjunct professor at LUMS, focusing on teaching entrepreneurship, innovation in education and AI, and has vast experience in training executives on AI, both in Pakistan and Silicon Valley. Ms. Melissa McBride is the co-founder and CEO of Sophia Technologies and Sophia High School, a pioneering online education ecosystem. Melissa leads Disrupt Ed, a movement focusing on innovative, equitable, and sustainable education. With over 20 years of teaching and leadership experience, her vision in shaping the future of education through disruptive technologies makes her one of the foremost experts in the area. Um, Mr. Florian Ciprian is a senior IB World Schools manager based at Global IB Center in Singapore. He engages with schools and school systems to provide partnership, guidance, and support so that they can achieve their optimum teaching, learning, and assessment objectives. He is focused on advocating for school priorities while promoting increased depth and breadth of program development and also serving as a catalyst for learning community success through IB evaluation. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. And welcome, of course, to our audience. I hope you find this session engaging. I certainly am looking forward to it. So ladies and gentlemen, I think to begin the session, let's really ask the question, so what if ChatGPT wrote it? You know, with AI being as powerful as it is, what is the harm in letting it do the bulk of our work for us? And should educational institutions spend time and resources trying to govern how it's used? So we can start from Dr. Banuri on the left and go in sequence, I suppose. Dr. Banuri, and if we can try to make the opening statements about 2 minutes each so that we have time for the rest of the conversation, that would be great. Dr. Banuri, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Nasir Saab, for inviting me. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a huge hype around ChatGPT and about the breakthrough of generative AI. The point that strikes me is that there are very strong parallels in our history when we made some kind of a major technological breakthrough. One example that I would like to remind you of is the scientific management approach roughly 100 odd years ago, and the emergence of the assembly line. The idea there was that, you know, whenever you produce something, it is a craftsman who used to produce it. And at some point, people figured out that, well, the craftsman does a number of tasks, and you can break down those tasks into small components, and a machine can do them. And lo and behold, machines started doing it. And they became cheaper, and they became much more affordable, and the human content shifted to something else. Now, the same thing that happened 100 years ago, in which you had cars being produced by craftsmen sitting together and trying to shape and put it together, all of a sudden you took all of that away, put it on a machine, and the craftsmen were removed, and just humans were doing, you know, just screwing in something or putting one plate on top of the other, total mechanical rote work. And the result, of course, was that it produced a tremendous increase in productivity. What it did was that it pushed us humans away from doing the routine work into doing something which was more creative. Now, we have the analog of that today, that when we do intellectual work in terms of writing, in terms of creating art, there's a lot of routinized operations there, and then there's real creativity. And what it has enabled us to do is to break it apart, that the routine work can now be left to a machine, whereas we are left to do creative work. And Nasir Saab, I'll just conclude with one example. The great artist Picasso was once asked was it true that he could, just with a pencil, produce a perfect circle. And he took up a pencil and a canvas, and he drew a perfect circle, absolutely, you know, circular. And when he reached the end of that circle, he put in a little squiggle. And somebody asked him, "Why did you put in that squiggle?" And he said, "If it was a perfect circle, that would be just geometry, meaning that would just be a machine. The squiggle is mine." Now, interestingly, you see, this is something that we need to learn to understand, that routinized work is not creative. The creative part of it is how we can harness the routinized work and give our own imprimatur on it. I think what ChatGPT and all of these things mean is that all of us are unique and all of us are artists. It enables us to become artists. And this is the breakthrough that we should look for.
Thank you. Florian.
Thank you for that segue in creativity. For us at the International Baccalaureate, it was clear that these AI tools will become part of our everyday life. So we need to readily adapt our programs, our assessment, and our practices so students can understand how to use them ethically and effectively. I think the more opportunities we give to young people to understand what a tool is and how it can be used and how it can be used ethically, the better opportunities for creativity. So to that end, we had to reflect on what is important for an IB education. We work with 5,000 schools in 160 countries globally, and we represent the voices of those people. We create the programs, the reflections, the assessment, and the value of an IB education through the voices of their communities, including your community of IB education in Pakistan. So it was time for us to think about how assessment reflects what we value in education. What are we assessing? Are we assessing production of text or value of ideas? And we still have to make changes to adapt to these developments in AI. We believe in having assessment tools that are more than just examinations, and then important that students understand what is the ethical use of an artificial intelligence. And really, to be honest, and I'm going to keep it very short and kind of answer the question through another question that breaks down this understanding of so what, if, now what. If a student understands everything they have submitted, they can discuss and explain it. If they have been ethical and transparent in how they have used the ideas of others, and we are assessing those areas of their thinking that cannot be covered by artificial intelligence, does it really matter if someone else or something else wrote that? What is the purpose of our evaluation and assessments, and what do we value in education? Those are some thoughts I want us to kind of build on.
Fair enough. Please.
Thank you. The stance I'm going to take from my background in both industry and teaching is that the truth is the quality of the output, or actually let me put it this way, ChatGPT represents an amazing technical breakthrough. At the back end, to me it's personally very beautiful that our language has so much mathematical logic behind it that we can break it down into equations and predictions. To me, that's very beautiful. That's a beautiful thing about language. So at the back end, it's a big technical breakthrough. But on the front end, I actually think ChatGPT is not really giving you the quality of answers a lot of people seem to think. If you have even somewhat specialized knowledge in a field and you try to learn more about it from ChatGPT, you'll quickly realize it's giving you very, very generic information on the topic. It is not a very big jump from just doing a Google search on a topic. The important difference is that it's not just copy and pasting static stuff from the internet, it's actually composing answers based on using probability and predictions based on what it thinks we want to hear. But it can rarely go into depth. It can rarely give you specialized answers. So I'm going to make the point that 3 months ago, it was really cool to see that ChatGPT was able to compose answers. But the truth is, everyone who's using it has already kind of realized it's reasonable when you have no information and just want a starting point, but it cannot give you even the quality of answers you need in a school environment, in your work. It cannot give you depth. It cannot give you nuance. So basically, it's just really a co-pilot, and it doesn't have the potential to be more than that until we start looking at tuned, specialized, and optimized tools that can be built upon that. Those have a lot of potential for specific applications, but those are also a lot of effort to develop. Remember, this base model itself took, more than 5 years and billions of dollars to develop. So the stance I'm going to take is, there's no problem if ChatGPT wrote it. Everybody knows that the answer ChatGPT gave you is quite mediocre. It cannot be used in the context that most people are thinking. I feel like at the school level, we need to make students aware of its presence. We can give them very high-level guidance on how you prompt it and how you take advantage of it, but let students tinker with it. Don't make them think that this is an important skill to develop in school. It's a skill to develop on the side like a hobby to make the most out of it, but it's a very, very limited tool at the moment for limited tasks. The genius is in using it to supplement the other way you do your work, and that's how I see it evolving in the near future.
Well said. Actually, I quite agree with that. I always tell people that the answers are incredibly generic and lack creativity. So if you're going to use it to do everything, you're not really going to come up with anything original or interesting. Good point. But it is a great tool. Melissa, so what if ChatGPT wrote it? Please share your thoughts with us.
Yes, so good morning, everybody from London. Good afternoon to you. It's fantastic to be here. So one thing I've noticed, actually, before I get to the heart of that question is you have some incredible young people sitting in the audience today. If you are under 18 in the audience, can you just wave and make yourself seen to everybody else? And hopefully they're doing that. And I think the reason
I think everyone is raising their hands right now.
Good, excellent. We won't tell anybody. I think it's so important that we recognize one key fact is that what is happening will have an impact on our lives, but it is going to transform the lives that young people under 18 face as we look to 2030, 2050, 2070 and beyond. And my experience, both as an educator but as a mum of four, is young people more than ever in history are just built differently, and they have the most immense capacities to create. And I think that is what is most important when we talk about who cares about ChatGPT and if it wrote it. I think they're going to use it anyways. They know about it. And Florian, to your point, I think it's absolutely fundamental when we as the policymakers and we as the leaders within our various sectors are thinking about its impact. We remember about safe, effective, and ethical use of AI. Because if we can instill this in young people, if we can inspire them to look beyond the ability that they've been using already for years on Google and Wikipedia to find and search for information, is actually how do we move up Bloom's taxonomy? How do we move beyond knowledge? How do we move to creation? And I think that is really where I see the power of ChatGPT and how it can unlock education for the over 222 million kids around the world who are not currently in school.
Fantastic. That's a great response, Melissa. And I think let's see what Nadia has to say about this, our venerable AI bot, who I hope will work better than she did at the initial session. But here we go. Nadia, what is the danger of letting ChatGPT and artificial intelligence do all the work that human beings have historically had to do? Did you actually hear that?
As an AI avatar panelist, I believe that while AI and automation can enhance efficiency and productivity, human involvement remains crucial. It's important to strike a balance, leveraging technology while preserving human skills, creativity, and empathy. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, I think that's pretty good. I think that's what the panel was saying, right? So, well done, Nadia. Okay, fantastic. So, Melissa spoke a little bit about, how AI can be used by young people to really do incredible and amazing things and express their ideas. And I thought perhaps, we can, everyone can speak to us about how the industries that you're associated with or that you're passionate about have been, potentially have already been transformed by AI or are going to be transformed by AI, and how it's really letting maybe young entrepreneurs scale their ideas. more effectively. So, Melissa, we can perhaps start with you, and then we will ask the other panelists to chip in as well.
Really lucky to be sort of a maverick in a field and build a maverick school that is probably as innovative because we are a school in the cloud. And the kids at Sophia High School who are between 4 and 16, you know, they've been using AI for 18 months. It began with understanding about some of the tools that already existed. It moved quickly to actually prompt engineering, you know, how do we create prompts? The kids have their own prompt library. But now what we're doing is we're seeing a lot more creation with code, creation within immersive settings, building their own Nadias. And it's just such an immense tool to provide another layer of support when our children in schools need that so badly. You know, we know that we have a global teacher crisis, and that's before we begin to look at areas that are unfortunately suffering from conflict and from crisis, and we have displacement of children. And I think the way that we've approached it is how can we leverage AI as an assistant to our educators to streamline, you know, that workflow that they have to handle on a day-to-day basis. How can we use AI effectively to enable them to create individualized learning pathways for students at scale? How can we get rid of some of the autonomous work, again, that's necessary, but actually AI is well placed to do that. And any minute we give back to our teachers, you know, they're able to put that back into working in sessions with our students and building those relationships and providing that facilitation and support. But actually, as you rightly said, you know, the real kind of inspiration I get is when I see young people and their vision and their innovation and their ability to create on it, not to cheat and not to speed up, you know, I have to submit a piece of homework, but actually to go beyond, to take AI where their original learning may have stopped and how to then transform that and push it forward and create and go beyond. And I think that's really what we see for our use of AI is it is a sage guide. We use it when it helps children in the learning process to push them beyond, to support them, and we put it away when it doesn't.
Fantastic. And Jazeb, your perspective.
Sure. So my impression is that ChatGPT in particular and similar tools are already extensively being used in all industries. Even when I talk to friends at companies like McKinsey, Google, they honestly tell me that when they feel stuck, they frequently use ChatGPT to get an initial taste for a topic. They don't use it as their final answer for anything because it's not of that quality. But whenever they're feeling stuck on the many new topics they have to learn in a day, they see ChatGPT as a little more user-friendly than just a Google search in getting some form of coherent answer. So I feel like pretty much every industry is using ChatGPT in some form. I feel like industries that are heavy on content, like copywriting, marketing material, are using it pretty extensively because a lot of their work is actually quite labor-intensive, and they're using ChatGPT to prepare more variations of their content than they could do with humans in shorter time. But from my vantage point as someone working in the software industry, I can tell you the most promising areas of AI are very specific ones. One example, you probably don't realize how labor-intensive game design is. In game design, we have to make a lot of art. Every single art frame needs to be made. We have a lot of tools in industry that quicken the process, but we still have armies and armies of illustrators, renderers who are making those hundreds of frames, those thousands of sprites, those animations. So AI tools have already come up that are simplifying these things. At the most basic level, you have AI tools that you write a prompt, you know, make me a sprite for a character in an RPG game. The more specific you make it, the more options it gives you. So AI is taking out, so it's not taking out the creative process. We're still telling it what to make. We're still taking it and tweaking it and integrating it, but it's removing that kind of labor-intensive process in between. And in my mind, the most promising areas of AI are where we will use it to figure out where are we spending a lot of time and money and losing value, and where can we kind of get AI to do that and to do the labor-intensive stuff while we focus on the more value-added stuff.
Fantastic. Florian.
Absolutely. This idea of efficiency, what are we spending our time on, and what are we having students do in classrooms, in exams, and in their interactions in their learning communities, it really presented to us that the idea is an opportunity and not a fear. It reminded us, I think, it reminded us of what we value in education, and we already do that, but I think it solidified this idea of how can we make more critical thinking, more recognizing of bias, more skills-based approaches, project-based, connected learning with the immediate environment important in young people's lives. And we need to ensure as educators, and you work in schools, many of you, that we have evaluation tests that require students to do more than just gathering facts and opinions. We already do that a lot through our programs. We also need to think about how to redefine what's important to us, what communication skills now look like across language and culture, and how can we use AI in the day-to-day interactions. This, of course, will change education. We need to teach students about prompt engineering, use less time on writing and more time on thinking, emphasize the dangers of bias being built into the AI models and the issues of inclusivity that we're going to discuss in this panel today. And let's just think about this one aspect. AI learns from a body of work. So far, a body of work created by the human experience on this planet that's on the internet. But what happens if that body of work is biased or incomplete? What happens when we move on to generations of knowledge created by AI and new realities created through that synthesizing of information? Why AI produces wrong information? And how is this transferable to what we teach students in the classrooms? So there has to be a paradigm shift, I think, in education overall in terms of using our time efficiently and effectively with students and understanding what we really value and how can we best use our time that's really valuable in our educational programs.
Fantastic, thank you. Dr. Banuri, from your, you've kind of had a macro view on the policy side as well at the HEC. You have a lot of experience. Can you tell us in your various capacities, have you witnessed any AI disruption in the various sectors that you've been involved with?
Nasir Sahab, let me take this question forward a little bit. Let me just say a few things, and they bring in a little bit of the background context. The first thing I want to say to you is this. Machine is not the measure of a human being. A machine, we are not machines. We are not, quote unquote, intelligent machines. The hand-wringing over ChatGPT almost makes it appear as if we are all machines, and now the machines can do whatever we are doing, so we are basically become useless. If I can speak in Urdu for a minute, वो उर्दू का एक शेर है कि करूँगा क्या अगर मोहब्बत में हो गया नाकाम, मुझे तो और कोई काम भी नहीं आता. So it was almost as if people felt that, we are just intelligent machines, and now if machines can do some of the more intelligent work, we have become useless. Now this way of thinking is a problem. And in order for us to unravel it, what I want to suggest is, I'll give you one framework. This framework, in recent years, a number of people have written about it. My colleague and friend Stephen Moglen at Harvard University has written extensively about it, but there are other people, Karl Polanyi, Robert Pirsig, and 1,000 years ago, Sheikh Sohrawardi, who was one of the great Sufi saints. They divide knowledge into broadly two categories. Steve Moglen calls it episteme, which is kind of very abstract, almost mathematical knowledge, tautological knowledge. Episteme and techne. Techne is something which is embedded in the person's body. So all knowledge that you think about has some component of episteme and some component of techne. The problem with the modern world is that suddenly we started thinking that epistemic knowledge is not only superior, but ultimately that is the only form of knowledge. Now, what that does is that it actually makes machine the measure of man, because man also then begins to resemble the epistemic framework that the machines bring. And the more and more things we give to the machines, the less there is for us to do. Now, Steve's point, and in fact Sheikh Sohrawardi's point, and Robert Pirsig's point is that that is not how knowledge really is. And the Picasso example I gave you is also very illustrative in this regard, that machines do what is routinized and what does not require creativity. Humans do what requires creativity. We are bound to the earth. We cannot do much because a lot of our life is spent in these little routinized things. The more machines we have, the more they free us to do something which we were created to do, and that is the creative part of it. So the point I'm trying to make is we need to have a framework of thinking that allows us to realize that the routinized work is not who we are. We are all individual, creative human beings. Each one of you, and I'm talking to the younger people, before you die, you have to write one book. You have to create a work of art. In fact, your whole life should be a work of art. And that is something that you can do the moment we can free you a little bit from the routinized work that is necessary to sustain life on the planet. So this, think about ChatGPT not in terms of, it is replacing us, because what it is replacing is not the part that is human. It's the part that is animal, it's the part that's the machine. That is what it is replacing. What it is not replacing is what is unique, what is creative, what is the genius in you, that it cannot and it can never create. It can never replace. So let's build on that. Let's find our creative spirit, and let's use this opportunity to express ourselves much more fully than we have in the past. Thank you.
Fantastic. That was inspirational and comforting at the same time. Thank you. So, this kind of leads me to my next question, actually. Jazeb, you talked about how, AI introduces a lot of efficiencies and allows us to, sort of automate mundane tasks. And Dr. Banouri, of course, is talking about, how, again, in some ways, we should focus on the creative parts of being a human being. And that's going to be our forte in the future. But my question really is that there are a lot of people currently employed, in routine, mundane tasks, people who are driving, even people who are doing basic accounting, turning a trial balance into a balance sheet and P&L. AI does wonders with this stuff. And Dr. Banouri initially spoke about the Industrial Revolution, and there was job creation where there was job loss. My fear with AI is that we're not just automating physical processes, but also certain cognitive processes, be they the less creative ones. And people are concerned about this. Part of the reason for the recent Hollywood writers' strike was because they were concerned about the use of AI. I was looking at some of the world's top tech companies, which are now, the largest companies in the world. And like Apple, for example, employs 1/100th the number of employees for every $1 billion they generate as compared to a brick and mortar company like Walmart. So there's going to be a lot of displacement of people who are doing mundane jobs. And my fear is we may not need as many creative people, artists, philosophers, thinkers who are doing the inherently human things, to replace those jobs which are lost. So I'm wondering, I thought I'd ask Jazeb for his perspective on that, and then Dr. Banouri and our other panelists can comment if they want to. Your views on that, please.
Sure. I feel like the example about the artists, the script writers, the producers is a great one. When I teach people about AI, I show them both sides of the coin. On the one hand, Netflix is putting up ads for AI experts for $900,000 a year. That is how they're valuing an AI expert to come and start making AI-generated content that'll give them a lot of money in return. On the other hand, people who have been creatively making this content are going on strikes. So it's two sides of the same coin. These things are happening at the same time, and in a nutshell, that represents what is kind of challenging about AI and why we're not exactly sure how these things are going to pan out in the near future. When I look at these things simplistically, my first thought is, dekhein, because of AI, the role of the entry-level employee and the role of the intern will go away. Because what are those roles? Those roles are very much do research, go online, do generic routine stuff. So it seems like AI is going to take that stuff away. But the truth is, when I look at it practically, when I actually ask myself that the kind of jobs that I think I could give to AI, can I really do them at the moment? The truth is, you still need people to have oversight. You still need people to check things. Even if I use the world's best AI tool to summarize something, the truth is I cannot trust the output at this point, not just because sometimes the answer is wrong, but because sometimes the answer is not of the quality I need. So right now, AI is not at the point where I can just let it run on autopilot. I can only let it run on copilot. So I still need those entry-level employees. I still need those interns to write the prompts, to use the AI tools to get the answers. They can do their work in a more efficient way, but I still need them there. I just need them to be a bit smarter about how, I need them to be smarter about using the AI tools and how to upskill themselves on the job. So at this point, I don't see AI necessarily taking away jobs. I see it supplementing everyone's jobs, the doctor's job, the entry-level hospitality person's job. Everyone should understand how they can use AI to do their job better. And there's still place for the generic jobs, but in a slightly more specialized way. That's how I'd summarize it.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Banuri, what are your views on potential job displacement because of AI?
Okay, I gave you the example of the Industrial Revolution and the assembly line. Harry Braverman wrote a very interesting book somewhere around 1920s, looking at not only job loss, but also about how the economy would change. Now, the thing is that we realized at that time that there were machines and they could do a lot of work which people were doing in the past. If you look back 100 years later, you realize that the number of jobs actually went up rather than go down. Okay. So it's not that in the long term it actually does this, but it also is, there are two other things. One is that there's a transitional cost, because there are people jinko mohabbat ke alawa koi kaam nahi aata, so for them we have to do something different. We have to retrain them, we have to reposition them. So that transition costs are very important. And the second one is that the nature of industry, the nature of production is also going to change over time. And Braverman's book actually took us through this. I do recommend it. It's a 100-year-old book, but because it was written at a time when a similar process was taking place, it has a lot of lessons for us today. So the issue is the nature of the restructuring of production so that it can allow more creativity, more human creativity, and more of the kind of jobs that allow the human element of us to survive. What kind of a restructuring that is going to be? That is the big issue for us. At this moment, we are stuck because we are pushing everybody just to do routinized work. In Pakistan, when I look at it, everybody behaves like clerks, and they just do routinized work. That's not what we are born for. What we are born for is to be creative and to bring our genius to the world. And this restructuring is something that is going to allow us. There will be transitional costs, and we have to bear those costs socially, not put the burden on the individuals. But in the long term, this is going to be something which frees us rather than binds us.
Thank you for that. I'm going to, thank you. I'm going to quickly ask Nadia also, and then in fact, I think we'll move on to our next question, which I'll address directly to Melissa and Florian, which is very education related. So, Nadia, how can we make sure that people don't become unemployed as a result of the extensive use of artificial intelligence? Okay.
Ensuring people's employability in the age of AI involves upskilling and reskilling initiatives, fostering a culture of lifelong learning, and creating new job opportunities that complement AI technology. What ideas do you have for promoting a smooth transition in the workforce?
Well, fantastic. Dr. Banuri and Jazeb, she agrees with you, so fantastic. Okay, so, we are being now. I think I was congratulating you guys. But anyway, we're a school, so AI has major implications in education, and one of the things we struggle with, particularly in the Pakistani context, is education equity and inclusiveness. And so I was wondering if you guys can comment. Melissa, maybe you can start, and then Florian, you can maybe talk about specific instances and ways in which AI has been used and can be used to make education more equitable and inclusive. So, Melissa, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think when we take a global view, what we're seeing is what historically may have been the alternative quickly moving into the center. And why is that? Well, because more and more children are not able to achieve their potential within, a traditional model of education that's existed for 260 years. We've had tech. I certainly remember the TV VCR trolley, the overhead projectors, the transparencies, the whiteboards, but actually none of them have really transformed how we reach young kids. And if we think just about some more stats, I mentioned there are 260 million kids not in school, but 120 million that are, and these are in the most crisis effective areas. They're not even achieving minimum proficiency in reading and math. We add to that the complexity of a global teacher crisis. Teachers are not well paid globally. Being a teacher myself, historically, we're also really wanting to give back to our young people, but our time is just so pressurized. So the way that I see AI looking effectively is it gives us great power to scale high quality models of education through tech, through the use of AI, to upskill and support our teacher workforce, those that are qualified and those that are not, to begin to decentralize this access and actually at the same time leveling the playing field for children that have not had equitable access historically. And I think that is something that I'm very, very excited about. That is something that my team are working really hard on. And I think it's one of the greatest opportunities to address SDG 4, which is how we can scale access to high quality education and use our AI counterpart as a mechanism that allow us to do that. Because if we can, level the playing field, take away some of the autonomy, our teachers have more time to do the fundamental thing that AI can't, which is to work and connect in human relationships with young people, to develop their mental well-being, their capacities for confidence, growth, hitting those McKinsey deltas, because that is not something that AI can do at this point in time, but they are so fundamental that we deliver in our young people. Happy children make great learners. And I think that is one of the things I see AI really being able to help in terms of that workflow. And again, going back, if we don't teach kids how to create with AI, then all they're going to do is cheat with it. And I think that's really important for policy members to remember.
Yeah, that's true. Florian.
Absolutely, Melissa. And that's a good reminder of the limitations of these generative language models. So for example, if we were to ask our AI panelists the same questions we've been asking today in a different language, let's say my home language, Romanian, which has two vowels that are not represented a lot across the writing systems on the internet, we wouldn't get as many good quality or mediocre quality answers. So there are limitations in terms of inclusion of people who speak other languages, who have other views of the world, and who are not represented in terms of their knowledge, for example, indigenous knowledge, on the internet. We're losing diversity at an alarming rate, and now a lot of the work that AI does is based on the powerful nations, the languages that carry a lot of power, so we need to be really cognizant in the way that we support students. And that reminded me of what was said in terms of the human dimension of AI and what you are saying, Melissa, about the role of the teachers. We see practical steps now, and I can reassure you that no teachers will lose their jobs because of AI. There will be changes in the way that we interpret, and we have already made practical steps at the IB to strengthen the academic integrity of the work that students produce, because that was the initial worry and concern that schools had, people had. How will we know who wrote it? And that brings us back to our question today. So what if ChatGPT wrote it, or other AI language model? And we continue to, like we did in the past, to ask teachers to work alongside students, writing coursework and internal assessment and reflecting on the quality of their education. So we have updated our academic integrity policy. We see schools already around the world hiring AI coordinators or heads or directors in schools so they can harness the power of the technology that we have available. Okay. And we continue to use this human dimension of teaching and relation to understand how work was built, constructed, understood, so we can let students use these tools to the best of their advantage and yet continue to use it ethically in a way that's inclusive and in a way that encourages equality across the world. There's a lot of work to do, but we are seeing the opportunities already at the IB.
Thank you, thank you. And now we'll move on to Nadia. Nadia, can you give me 4 examples of how artificial intelligence has been used to increase equity and availability of education?
Certainly. Here are 4 examples of how AI has been used to increase equity and availability of education. 1. Personalized learning. AI-powered platforms provide customized learning experiences, adapting to individual needs and abilities, making education more accessible and inclusive. 2. Language translation. AI-powered translation tools break language barriers, enabling students to access educational resources and communicate with teachers in their native language. 3. Virtual tutoring. AI-based virtual tutors offer support and guidance to students, especially in underserved areas where access to qualified teachers may be limited. 4. Data analytics. AI helps analyze large amounts of educational data, identifying patterns and trends to improve curriculum development, identify at-risk students, and enhance targeted interventions. How do you think AI can further contribute to educational equity and availability?
Okay, fantastic. Some interesting points there, I think, Nadia. Thank you. Yeah, let's give her a round of applause. I think we should definitely move on to questions now. We do seem to have a few. Okay, so yeah, let's start from the beginning. Okay, is it possible for AI to take total control over basic jobs through machine learning? Did we not already kind of discuss this? Yeah, I think let's move on to the next one. Can we hire Nadia as a teacher in Beacon House? I think you guys should rue the day that we decide to do that. But I think we've also discussed that at length. We gave calculators to the kids, and it stopped them from doing mental math. Will ChatGPT do the same thing to their writing skills? Okay, so I think this is a reasonably interesting question, right? I mean, there is a risk. We're like a transitional generation. We had to learn how to do stuff manually. So, when we use AI, we can kind of stress test it. We can gauge the quality of the output. If you grow up in a context where all you've ever done is use AI, that is risky because you may just take whatever it's saying as gospel and, lose the ability for creative thinking. So can we go back to the question, please? So yeah, I mean, if we give them this AI crutch, let's say, is there a chance that they will just become sort of automatons blindly following AI without the capability of doing basic things themselves? So, Dr. Banui, because you had some interesting things to say about this, I mean, what are the risks there?
What difference has it made that people can't do mental math? I'm from a generation where we had to remember all of those things, the multiplication tables and so forth. My daughter doesn't have to do it. And I think she's brighter than me. It's not really a question that, it's this technique that is important. It's important is what we as a whole individual can do. So the same thing about this, if somebody can help me do some routinized work, it frees up my time to do something that I really want to do. Different people have different opinions. I've been very consistent. This is the way I think about it, and this is the way I think it should be.
Thank you. Jazeb, so interesting, because you're from a software background as well. And, one of the things that I was at a university that we work with recently in the UK, and the computer science department was freaking out because they were saying that, like it can write code. That's one thing it does really well, basic code. And they're really struggling with their year 1 and 2 coding students because in most cases it can write better code than them, or at least as good. And they're afraid that some of their students might lose the ability, and some of it is wrong, and they don't know when it's wrong. So how does one address these challenges, make sure that students, I understand the calculator example I agree, I mean, is it really that important to be able to know mental math? But it's kind of important to be able to know coding if you want to make sure that the code being generated by the AI is accurate. So how do we make sure that kids are competent yet using it effectively?
No, I'm really glad you asked that question because of its implications. So what I want you all to know is that in industry, software engineers do not actually write as much original code as you're thinking. They take a lot of their code online because it's already been made and tested for practical commercial purposes. When they get stuck on something, they go to these forums like Stack Overflow, and they ask questions where they get answers where people give them the code to do specific things. That is how software is written in industry. It's not one person writing a lot of original code. It's one person understanding code well enough to kind of take all these resources and put them together. If you expected software engineers to write everything from scratch, they could not make the quantity of code needed in industry. So kind of building on that, what I'm hoping you're all realizing is that it's not being able to write all the code syntax by syntax that's the valuable skill in the long run. And it's not in schools either. What schools need to do is, at the basic level, they need to give assignments that are kind of free of ChatGPT, like, fill in this exercise or find the error in this code, things that something like ChatGPT won't do easily, so they learn the basics. But when it comes time to actually writing extensive code, yes, that's available online. It was online available even before stuff like ChatGPT is there. But we need to train people on understanding where the errors are, how to integrate it, how to modify it, how to make it better. So all of this training is still going to happen in the classroom. And the long-term impact of all of this is there is not going to be room for a mediocre engineer anymore. I would rather use ChatGPT instead of mediocre engineer, but there's even more value to the high-quality engineer, and that's going to be true of a lot of professions.
Fantastic, thank you. And the next question I will address to Melissa and Florian, perhaps. Do you think teachers asking students not to use ChatGPT in schools is unfair? Melissa.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the audience. Young people, put your hands up if you're already using it. And tell me what the response is.
There are a few young-ish people in the back, apparently. They're using it.
Yeah.
The old people are using it as well.
I think, to be honest, this is a fundamental skill for life, right? This is something that they are absolutely going to need for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. And if we do not activate this in our classrooms, they are going to find a way to use it. And to a lot of this point, I'm really glad on the software engineering, because what developers, on the other side, we have developers they're not always good at is QA, right? Quality assess your own work. But I think what's going to happen, as we start to open up, especially around coding, is you're going to have young people who are able to code far faster, and more effectively at a younger age. So, we used AI in the school, as I mentioned, and, it's no longer Scratch and Python. Our kids, 11 years old, are coding with C# and C++ because they can, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's about an alignment here, but I would say it is a fundamental right that we're going to need to begin to deliver this with kids and go on that journey of exploration.
Okay. Florian, we're getting to the end of our session. Quickly, your perspective on how should it be allowed in schools or not?
I want to relate a bit to the previous question in terms of writing skills. Writing skills are not text production. And immediately for us in the IB, we already have an assessment in a course in the theory of knowledge where it is possible theoretically for students to submit work that was written by ChatGPT and get the same result as a student who wrote it themselves, because we do not assess text production and language skills in there. So it's time to rethink how we think about communication, what are the language skills that students need, and value those critical thinking skills rather than text production. And then, of course, we won't be afraid to let the students use it. I agree with you, Melissa. I think students have a right to have access to tools that can make their learning better, whatever it may be. People, AI, connections, experiences in their communities, and anything else that creates a rounded student who can make the world a better place.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are more or less at the end of our session. I've found the discussion, fascinating. Myself personally, as someone who's both intrigued by AI and a bit pensive sometimes about the major impacts it's going to have on human civilization. But such are all major transformations, and all technologies can be used as a force of good and evil, and oftentimes they are used as both. And I think it's incumbent on us as human beings to make sure that we use technology, artificial intelligence being one of them, in a responsible manner that really improves the life of human beings overall around the planet. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that. Thank you to our distinguished panelists for taking the time out to be with us and sharing their valuable thoughts. And thank you to everyone in the audience for being here and being part of the session. Thank you, everyone.